Hey everyone, this is Car Ray Rob, where I'm Ray.
And I'm Rob, and we want to welcome you to our podcast, Say Hello to My Little Film. Hey there, it'll be just a little while till Ray and Rob spit their spittle. Come on, check out of the hospital. So grab some of your best peanut brittle. This will be a darn good transmittal. And say hello to my little film. All right, everyone, we are back with a brand new, fresh episode of Say Hello to My Little Film.
Happy April, Rob.
Happy April. On this podcast, we take turns recommending movies to each other that the other has not seen that we love to see if the other person loves them as much as we do.
You're going to try to convince me to love a movie? I dare you.
That's my goal, and we're going to see if I can make that happen. And I think I might be able to do that this
cool.
month. You know, I know sometimes it's hit or miss. I feel like I'm more hit or miss than you are.
Well, but you always expose me to things that challenge me, and I respect you for that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You know, I try not to play it safe, and this month I might not be.
Oh, is that a fact?
It is, but you know, we'll see. We'll see. I'm not. I think there's a good offhand chance that you will definitely enjoy this movie. But you know, let's not talk about that right at the moment.
Sure.
Let's talk about. You said it was April. I mean, it's
Yeah.
spring. It's springtime outside.
That's right.
Flowers are blooming. Birds are chirping.
Allergies are sneezing.
They are, and with a vengeance, with a force. But you know what helps that? What if the bird's feathers weren't made of actual feather?
Like
Just idea right off the top of my brain.
like porcelain?
Maybe, or maybe something.
Yeah, I don't think I'm not allergic to porcelain.
Yeah, but maybe that has something to do with the movie that I'm going to show to you.
Is that a fact? Well,
Oh,
that's
that's a
interesting.
fact.
That's interesting. Okay. Well, Rob, what do you got?
What do you got? What do you got? What do you got? Well, what I got, Ray, is maybe a genre you are not altogether familiar with. Maybe you've
Really?
never even seen before. Maybe
There's
never
a
even
genre
heard
of movie I've never heard of.
I can guarantee you of that.
Oh my gosh.
But so this is a movie that I've been wanting to show you for a little while, in a genre that I really wanted to show you for a little while. And let's start with the genre. It is a Giallo film.
Giallo, or what are you talking about?
So a Giallo film is an Italian crime thriller subgenre.
Oh, I thought you said Jello. Darn it.
Giallo, Giallo. They're called Giallo films because they are based on a series of books called Il Giallo Mondadori. And
I am not familiar with those books.
you know what? To be fair, I've never read any of them either. But they all have a distinct yellow cover, which is why the genre is called Giallo.
Giallo and yellow are two different words, Rob.
Well, and not in the same, or in two different languages. They are the same word. So there we go.
Oh, so we're learning Italian.
A little bit.
Sweet.
Exactly. So in contrast to last month, you know, which was for my recommendation, was also like a murder mystery-esque type film noir. This one is a little different,
Okay.
and it's different in the before with Humphrey Bogart, I wanted to do something that was a little, maybe I'll use the word obscure, even though it's not the right word. It's just, not
Yeah.
the first Bogart film that comes to your mind. And this one, I feel like I'm going to show you what at least for me personally, is my favorite Giallo film. And really, amongst critics, a really pinnacle point in the genre itself.
Very cool.
So we're going to kind of
So
go
this
to
is
the
the
top.
mainstream Giallo.
Kind of, yes. And it is Dario Argento's directorial debut, The Bird with the Crystal Plumage.
There's the bird reference.
There's the bird reference. I know you were kind of wondering where I was going with that.
This is about murdering birds.
I don't know if any birds get murdered in
very
this movie.
Hitchcockian.
You know what? That Hitchcock, was a bit of a influence on the Jolly filmmakers. So that's not an unfair thing
He
to bring
had
up.
birds that committed murder, and this guy has birds getting murdered.
Oh, sure. You know what? I never even thought of it that way.
There you
There
go.
you go. So like I said, this is Dario Argento's directorial debut. You would know him from the original Suspiria, Phenomena,
The Cat of Nine Tails, Deep Red, Tenebrae, Opera. I mean, you can go on and on and on. Like Argento is a master of the thrill and master of horror, as
Yeah.
sometimes referred to. But this is kind of a little different than what he kind of went on to make later on. This is more of a strict crime thriller type movie. There's no supernatural elements to it or
Hmm.
anything like that. So this movie stars Tony Musante as a writer who is in Rome, and he is, a little bit of a writer's block,
Sure.
but he's
That
there kind of
happens.
trying to work and all this stuff. But he witnesses a serial killer targeting a young woman, and she ends up surviving. But because he kind of was part of this incident, it kind of embroils him in finding out who this serial killer is. And
He gets the detective true crime bug.
exactly, so it kind of goes from there. So it's a
Okay.
simple setup. But the great thing with Giallo films, yeah, they are just so cool because it's mostly about the style. There's a lot of elements to it, and I don't want to spoil too many of them for you because I really want you to kind of go in fresh.
Yeah.
But I know we'll be talking about it in the after. But like I said, was as excited to show you a Giallo film. And this one in particular, I got to see this movie in the theater. My good friend Popkoff took me to Terror Tuesday at the Alamo Draft House to see this movie. It was the first time I ever saw it, and really blew my mind. So
Very cool.
when we decided to do this podcast, it was definitely one I wanted to show, and I finally get to do it.
I love a good crime
I
thriller.
know you do.
So I want to watch this movie. I'm gonna go watch this movie. You guys listening at home, if you have not seen this movie with a really long title, The Bird with the Crystal
Bird with the crystal
Plumage.
plumage. There
Yes,
you
if you
go.
haven't seen that, then you guys need to pause the podcast, go check it out, and then come back after you've watched it, hit play, and experience the review for the first time as me and Rob discuss this movie that Rob loves.
Ray and Rob are currently watching the film. You may be also watching the film. If you're not, then you're listening to me say that Ray and Rob are watching the film. They'll be right back when they're done watching the film.
All right, Rob. I don't want to start off with a spoiler, but this movie's 55 years old, so we
And
are.
everybody should have been pausing the podcast and
Yes.
watching it
You've
anyway.
you were warned. So my question for you is:
Oh God, questions for me aren't off the bat.
am I a sexist for not seeing this twist coming?
A woman's never the serial killer.
Has there ever been a real life woman serial killer?
I mean, what that movie Monster that with Charlize Theron?
Was that based on a true story?
It was
Oh.
Arlene something.
Okay,
So
well,
there we go.
Now we have precedent.
We
But
got precedent.
all right, I have to admit, I did not see it coming. I don't know if I could have.
Yeah.
I don't feel like it's like it's not a twist that's like so far removed from possibility that you are upset with it. I'm almost like it was right there.
Well, that's yeah. I
And
mean,
that's the idea, I
That's
guess.
the idea because he even said like the whole time that there's something that I feel like I saw that I just can't put my finger
And
on.
I was just like, no, there isn't. We've seen the scene 15 times. There's nothing you missed.
And then you're like, nope. There was something.
And
you
then I was
missed.
like, holy crap, I missed it too.
right.
15 times?
She was holding the knife the whole time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's I think I love the setup,
Yeah.
for the mystery. It's so simple but so effective.
Yeah, I think I first of all I have to say with a movie that has such a big twist, it almost
Yeah.
recontextualizes everything that you see. So
Yeah.
I almost feel like I need to watch it again before I can really accurately talk about it because I'm like, all
Sure.
right, how much did I miss?
Yeah.
Like subtle clues, but yeah, I mean, super effective.
Yeah.
Like not easy to pull off a big twist ending like this. And
No,
I
not
do
at all.
Because kind of like in A Lonely Place, for a lot of this movie, I was watching like the movie's not investing any time in who else this could be.
Right.
So it's like, and we've been so exposed in these last couple of years with like Only Murders in the Building, with these kind of whodunit type shows.
Yeah.
Orient Express has come back and that trilogy or whatever. And it's like, glass onion, whatever. So it's almost like I'm like I've seen these. Like it's not gonna get me. Like
Yeah.
it's either gonna be so weird and so impossible that I'm actually gonna be frustrated that it was that person,
Right.
or it's gonna be lame and it's just gonna be the husband.
Well, I was gonna say because the husband is super sus through like the whole movie.
Yeah.
As my
And
kid
you're like,
would,
I get,
as
and
kid
then you're
Mr. Kitty Kaiju
yeah,
would say.
and you're just like, I guess it's him, but fine. And then in the movie, it was
Yeah.
kind of,
Kind of.
he
Yeah.
admits to it, like he dies and admits to it, and I'm
Yeah.
like, weak. I called it. This is such a weak ending. The
Yeah.
husband should not have been the killer.
And then you're like, wait a minute, there's 15 minutes left of this movie. What am I gonna do for the rest of this movie?
And then you're like, wait, there's supposed to be something with a second voice. Who's
Yeah.
the second person? And you find out it was the woman the whole time.
Yeah. No, it's the Giallo genre is so effective, and I think that's one of the things that helps make a movie like this work. Is it's just the world that it builds. It just sucks you in, and you really go on the journey, and it kind of it allows for those kind of twists to be that effective.
Yeah, I think the movie definitely, it's beautiful. Yeah, like you said, it's got style for days.
Yeah.
And then like it pulls it off, and it makes sense. Like I give the ending credit. It made sense. I thought the tie-in with the painting was beautiful.
Oh yeah.
Like that was rewarding and added so much depth to the twist. Like it makes again, like you're gonna throw this person at me last second. Like there's got to be enough breadcrumbs to make me have bought it.
Sure.
And again, like they showed you the murder attempt 15 times. Like you could have seen it.
Yeah.
They showed you this painting of this woman and like just adding depth. Like it did everything they were supposed to do to pull off a big twist. It worked.
Absolutely. And like I said, the Giallo genre, like for it's interesting because you could look at something like this, like, well, this is a crime thriller, like you said,
Yeah.
we see them all the time now. They're a big thing. There's like half a dozen new series premiering every other week
Right.
on whatever streaming service that is this kind
And
of
just crime docs in
whodunit
general.
or true crime docs, exactly. But the Giallo genre is just something unto itself. And but it's interesting because you kind of have to ask yourself, like, does this style really make the genre?
Well, I guess, and I haven't seen I guess I've seen one, right? So I've seen
Fair
one
enough,
of these.
right? Exactly.
Is that the genre?
Congratulations.
Like how? Like so, what makes this like separate for me? Just like, all right, this being a little bit of a quirky '70s foreign-ish movie to a giallo, like.
Right. Absolutely. So Giallo has multiple different elements
Sure.
to it that kind of make it a
Yeah.
Giallo film. So, typically there is a mystery, suspense, murder kind of
Check,
element.
we had that here,
We
yeah.
got that here. And in not a supernatural way. Like I said, more straightforward, murder, pretty much murder.
This was kind of slashery.
And
Yeah.
to be fair, Giallo is a precursor to the slasher genre.
Okay.
Like most slasher movies, really
Yeah.
owe their origins to the Giallo genre.
Yeah, there was some Michael Myers, like especially I think maybe the third murder, like when she's
Sure.
in her bed,
Mm-hmm.
and then he's just in the doorway, or
Yeah.
I guess she's just in the doorway.
Right, which is so good. Like,
Yeah.
seriously. But going to that scene, there's usually a lot of like sexualized elements to it.
Mhm.
Now, this, especially in later Giallo movies, this is kind of in the middle. The Giallo genre kind of started in the 60s, and up to this point, they hadn't injected as much of the sexualization into it because of the ratings
Yeah,
and
sure.
the censors. So they kind of got a little more relaxed going through the 70s, and Argento and the rest of the Giallo directors started injecting more of that kind of psychosexual stuff into the movie, almost to the point of being almost like a sexploitation in
Right.
certain elements. There's usually the soundtrack is a huge part of it, and I think this movie is great in that element. I'm sure we'll talk about that.
No, we won't. I've never refused.
We're never going to talk
I
about that
refuse to.
ever. But the production design, obviously, shot designs,
Yeah.
lighting, that kind of very stark, a lot of vivid colors. You kind of saw that throughout this movie. There's a lot of that kind of pop. Almost like taking a bit from like the French New Wave with something like Jean-Luc Godard and stuff like that, kind of like playing with color and stuff. But like those kinds of things, the costume design,
Yeah.
things like that. Just again, that hyper stylized kind of look to the movie.
Yeah. I couldn't tell if that was. I mean, obviously, I think the movie looked great. Like you could just tell, like some things were just framed up really perfectly. I kind of the first thing that's coming to mind is the chase scene with like the hitman, like after the car when he's
Oh my God,
hunting
yes.
after Sam,
Yep.
and like just it's a fun little chase scene, but just so many times where things were just framed up, like
Yeah.
he's like in front of the bus and the lights turn on, or he
Mhm.
catches him in a mirror, in the reflection of a mirror, and then a
Yeah.
shot, and just a lot of like just really good work, cinematically there.
Definitely. Well, and part of that is Argento. I mean,
Oh, I'm sure.
like, I mean, just as a director, I mean, he's one of the greats. So I think that definitely, is part of that as well. Not that, other Jolly directors haven't like kind of gone in that same direction, do the same thing, because they
Yeah.
do. But to the degree and the effectiveness of Argento, you can, there are
Sure.
some people that'll, might
Yeah.
argue one way or the other.
Often imitated, never duplicated.
Right. But you brought up, like the shot design and things like that. I mean, so let's dive right in with that opening scene. Again, the one where you miss everybody misses the big
Yeah.
reveal, which is revealed to you in that opening murder scene or attempted murder
Just look.
scene, attempted murder, quote unquote. But I mean, man, just from the moment he sees them and the way that kind of like that foyer area is kind
Yeah.
of completely lit, like fire hot white, and then like it's dark behind in the actual gallery itself, and you see them up on the landing, and just when he's ends up rushing up and end up getting trapped inside, and which was that the husband protecting Sam?
Right.
Because like
Yeah,
otherwise
yeah.
she was gonna, what I mean, something to think about, in a second viewing. Like
Yeah.
that was
Because
that
you
the
almost
husband
wondered, like,
protecting him.
yeah. Because I'm almost wondering if she was faking it. Because like I remember, like when the police come up to her and he's like, "Is she gonna live?" She's like, "Yeah, it's like barely a flesh wound."
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, what
Yeah,
was
she
she
really
faking? Like
oversold
trying to
that.
get Sam in? And,
Right. That's something like you're talking about the breadcrumbs on a second
Yeah.
viewing. That would be one. Like
Yeah,
you'd be like,
that's what I
oh
mean,
man,
like-
so she was faking it. She was probably trying to lure him in.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I need to rewatch it. Now,
Right.
Darn it.
Or at the very least selling it that
Yeah.
she was
Yeah.
being attacked.
Right. At the very least.
At the very least, but maybe possibly kind of trying to catch him in her web. But Monica. I had it written down.
Monica the murderer, of
Monica the
course.
murderer. So yeah, but I mean that I remember sitting in the theater, like I said, for my first initial viewing, like that scene just got me.
Yeah.
And it's one that sticks with me to this day. And
It's kind of this like nightmarish scene where you're like, you want to help somebody, but you're like frozen and you can't, because he's not physically frozen, but he's stuck behind this glass, so he can
Right.
still see her
right,
like dying
Like,
out, but
yeah.
he can't do anything about it.
exactly.
Um,
And
which
like
is,
gets to that point where he's like sitting on the ground.
Yeah.
When the detective
it was
shows
weird.
up,
Like
and
he's
just like,
eventually like he just gives up, puts his hands in his pocket. He's like,
Yeah.
oh well, I tried. I can't do anything about it.
Absolutely. But Morosini, the inspector, comes up, and he does a good job of being that hard-boiled
Yeah.
detective that you would kind of get in that noir crime thriller.
I liked him though. Like, as again, if we compare this to A Lonely Place a little bit, like the detectives in that movie, like when they were harassing the protagonist, you kind of felt like they were not being fair and like kind of just like overly like ruining these people's lives, which in that movie it kind of does.
Yeah.
But in this movie, I always felt like he was like, I'm like, oh yeah, he takes his passport. I'm like,
He's
that's
like,
fair.
jacked his
I'm
passport,
like,
man.
that's fair. He needs them, like that's
Right.
you're in the middle of a murder investigation.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't flee the country.
Right.
Can't fly out of there. So
Yeah.
but and they end up having a pretty good relationship. He lets him investigate. He doesn't try to stop him. He actually gives him protection. So like yeah, this is a good detective. He's doing it the right way.
Yeah. And he has one of the best lines in the movie, which is, "We can't rule out that he's a pervert." I wrote that one. I don't know why.
That's very 70s.
It's just like when they're doing the lineup, it's like, we can't rule out that he's a pervert. I just love that.
I thought the part where like the transvestites in the lineup.
But that's super interesting, because obviously, like, that it, being of a different time, using outdated terminology, but it was still like somewhat like very respectful to a trans person.
Yeah, like
because
they're
it's
not
like,
perverts.
He's like, he's not a pervert. Like, he's supposed to, and he's like, thank you, and then like walks off. I just thought that was great. I'm like, that's like, it's oddly respectful and like this really
well,
cool
it's Italy,
way.
man. Like, so
Right?
they're
Yeah,
cool.
it's like they're cool. Yeah. But I also thought the technology, quote unquote, in this movie was interesting. It's like, here's the computer to solve the case.
I couldn't put my thumb on like if
Very
this was
70s
real or if this
computer.
was absolutely fake. Like I
Right.
really had no idea. I'm like, could computers do this in 1970? Like
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like when we watched
It wasn't-
Hackers in the 90s.
Yeah,
and
it
you're like,
wasn't
oh man, this is so real. And
Yeah.
this computer be like, no, that was fake as crap.
Yeah, it wasn't so off base where I'm like, I'm like, there's no way a computer could do that. But I'm also like, it's probably too far advanced. Like, I don't think a computer could do that.
Mhm.
But I don't know. But yeah, so those scenes were like funny. And well, you kind of mentioned like that. I did have a hard time putting my thumb on the comedy because like
Oh, sure.
I thought the comedy worked
Uh-huh.
like as funny lines and as funny characters, but I had a hard time placing it tonally. Like I just felt like the painter character when he's eating cats and like
Right.
that whole
I thought you would have liked that part.
yeah. Well, I'm saying I did think it was funny, but like I'm like, but I don't see this as a funny movie, so like it feels oddly out of place. There was that one side character, like the friend, I can't remember his name, like
Do I have it written
Renier
down?
or Signier or I have it written down.
Do you have
but
it written down?
I don't know where. I don't know where it is, but
Monty? No.
oh, Faina.
Oh, Faina.
Faina.
Yeah, Faina.
Like he was very funny, but I'm like also like I just don't know if you feel like tonally you fit.
yeah.
But so, and even Sam at parts, like I thought his interactions were a little bit weird at times. Like, I'm particularly thinking at the very last scene when he went to go see the painter, and he was like, basically got instructions from the murderer, like, if you keep investigating this, I'm gonna kill your girlfriend. And his girlfriend was like, don't leave. Like, I do not want you to leave because I could die. And he just literally laughs. He's like, oh my God. It's like, you think you're going to, I'm just going to go investigate this murder, but you're not going to get murdered.
Well, they did have
I was
two
like,
cops
what?
outside. Come
Well,
on.
they
They clearly didn't have a good.
yeah, it didn't work.
Didn't
so,
work. Even
but,
though they totally did the eye thing, like in the silent
yeah,
partner.
not as good,
Not as
though.
good though. I would
Not
say
as
not as
good.
good, but they did it. Which
it
I
is
was
weird
just
when you
like,
start to see some of these connections of shots
Right?
from, but Silent Partners was better.
Yeah, no,
But,
you don't get much better of a like a door hole, whether it's a mail slot or
Yeah.
stabbed out holes.
The mail slot, there was just
Silent
more.
Partner.
There was just enough base to make it more scary than literally just the eyeball.
Right.
And just an eyeball isn't scary. You need the whole like brim of the eyebrow. and
Definitely.
stuff. But so explain the comedy to me. Like, is it of the time, or
I think it's
do you
probably
like
more
it?
of the time. I mean, I'm not. It's not necessarily a trait of a Giallo film per
Okay.
se, but I mean, I think Italian filmmaking just has a little bit of a whimsy to it. I mean, we kind of talked about that about Australian filmmaking too.
Sure.
I do think that is a little bit of that, but especially in the 70s, because I think
I don't feel like spaghetti westerns are like loony.
I'm not saying that they're loony, but yeah, I mean, I guess that's fair. But like I said, I think and especially with Argento, maybe to be fair, it's a little bit
maybe
more
more
of
him.
Argento. Like he does have a dark sense of humor and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So I think that plays into it a little bit.
Like I've said, like if this movie wanted to be full-fledged comedy, it would have been great. Like those characters worked.
Yeah.
I just didn't know tonally if it took me out of it a hair.
Sure, I get that. But I think of the scene where the friend does take the tape when to figure out what the sound is, and he's like he and Julia are practically like having sex right there. And he's like, I'll just take these. I'll take them. You guys. Do
Literally
your
out
thing.
of nowhere too.
And we're just like, we're just gonna do it right now. And he's like, I'll be back.
Yeah.
And
He literally was like, "Hey, you want me to get you some coffee?" And then he's like, "Yeah,
Oh.
sure, give me some coffee." And then he's like, "Nah, I'm gonna have sex with my wife right in front of you instead." Okay, well, I'm gonna go.
Very 70s Italian, but yeah, no.
So sexually, they were pretty cool, man.
Sexually, they're cool, man. But I think overall, I thought the Sam and Julia relationship worked. As far these two kind of Americans abroad, if you will, in this foreign country, and you're trying to deal with this strife and tension, and like you said, it's we kind of compare. I mean, I did it to myself, showing you in a lonely place, and then this. But thinking back on Bogey's, relationship in that movie, where it was like the tension is kind of what broke them up, and like that could have gotten to that point here in this movie, like you said,
could have got her murdered.
where Sam's obsession with finding out who the murderer was could have become a thing where it was like they were going to break up the relationship. They didn't really go that way, and I'm kind of glad they didn't. That was kind of
they as I mentioned, she could have easily been murdered. She was attempted to be murdered. She just couldn't get into the apartment, which I will say, like, the girlfriend, I think was a little overdramatic. I would probably be overdramatic too if I was getting murdered. But I'm like, you put the dresser in front of the door. Just keep putting more crap in front of the. Get the fridge. Get another. Like, get the bed. Like, just keep putting things in front of the door. Don't just like
There's
run back
no
and forth
other
and
way
panic.
in.
Exactly. Like, you are safe if you keep that door blocked. There's no windows that don't have bars.
Right.
Like, keep that door. But anyway, but what did you like? I kind of liked the murder scenes, if I can say that without sounding like a weirdo. You know what I mean? But
Total weirdo.
yeah,
No.
for a you know, I don't want to say this is a slasher movie, but kind of.
No,
You know, like I said,
again,
it
it's
was
a
a precursor. So
Yeah.
you know, like there was some violence and some uneasiness. It wasn't scary because they do a good job of like it's not grotesque. Like they
Right.
don't frame like you don't see stabbing like anything, but
Sure.
you see blood spatter and you
Right.
see the fear.
Yeah.
I like
That is a trait of Giallo. Like the violent, like kind of stylized murder scenes, that is a trait of Giallo.
but not the grotesqueness.
But not the grotesque,
Yeah.
exactly. Because I mean, again, they weren't really doing that at that point.
Right.
You know what I mean? Even with like censors for one thing, but also just in general, that wasn't like, you know, as we kind of refer to it, really the post-aughts, so like the torture porn
right.
thing, like the
Saw
rise of
and-
torture, right? Of the aughts. Like I feel like in the 70s, not well, obviously there were directors that were doing that kind of thing. Like Giallo directors weren't necessarily going that route. It was
Yeah.
more about, like you said, the clever framing, the blood splatter, you know, things like that. Sometimes again, like there's the kind of that sexualized element, like you said, the scene
Yeah.
where the woman was in bed and like you could basically see through her top and
Yeah.
you know and all of that, you know, ripping off her panties and things
With
like
the
that.
knife.
Right, exactly. So it's yeah, I if you enjoy, if I can use that terminology, with that, then yeah, I mean, I think, you know, other Giallo films would
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah,
satisfy
because I
that
don't
as
need
well.
I don't need I don't need to see the puncturing and the of the
Sure.
skin
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
ripping off of
It-
her face, or we don't
it
need
do-
to go there.
It does kind of show you how less can be more.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that, you know, it's funny, you know, for something that is so overly stylized, it's still, you're right, not that level of grotesque that, you know, we tend to kind of be inundated with now,
Yeah.
where it's almost like the shock value of it.
Right.
And
Well, I
and
think
it,
they go for more substance over style, and it's like that wears off. Like, you know, it worked with Saw and it worked with Hostel, and then everything after that was kind of like, all right,
nothing worked with
yeah.
Hostel.
I remember Hostel being pretty like intense the first time I watched it. Like
Oh no,
that.
I don't disagree, but as so like I did not like Hostel.
No,
I'm
no,
not,
but
I'm not a torture porn guy.
No, I'm not either. But I'm just saying, like even after those first two movies, like all right, torture porn became a thing, and then after that, like all right, it's never really. Once you see it, you're like, okay,
That's
it
true.
doesn't have that
You
effect
kind of,
anymore.
You do
It's-
kind of become
you-
desensitized.
yeah,
That's
you
absolutely
become
fair.
jaded to it.
Absolutely, and maybe that's kind of that thing where, you know, sometimes when you are kind of overly inundated with something, when you see something different like this, it, you know, it really piques your interest.
Yeah, I said. Well, yeah, I said when it's more about the style, it's going to hold up longer. I think, and it's never going to become outdated. Where again, like you said, if you go back and watch Hostel now, and if you go back and watch Saw One, like Saw One's a good movie, but you're not as shocked when you see a guy sawing his leg off anymore. You're like, it's fine.
Right.
He's sawing his leg off. It's fine. It's a movie.
Definitely. And you know, the other thing that I kind of mentioned earlier as being a tenet of the Giallo movies is the score, which in this was done by Ennio Morricone, who we all know, we all love. So it's, you know, and again, a really amazing score, really haunting. You kind of have those like the almost like childlike choral passages, you know,
Yeah.
behind scenes and stuff like that. Just really, really good stuff. Argento would end up moving on later and doing stuff with a band called the Goblins,
Okay.
and so that became more of his style. But this is a really great piece by Ennio Morricone.
Yeah, I don't know a ton about music. I just know when my ear likes it, and I definitely felt that throughout this movie. I was like, the score does work.
But you know, we were mentioning music. The sound obviously ended up being, as far as the narrative goes, a huge portion of this.
Yeah.
You know, because that's what ended up basically kind of leading them to the husband.
The
and the
one
killer.
thing the supercomputer couldn't crack.
Right, exactly. So what? How did you feel? How did you feel about that? Because I could see that going either way, like the connection, if you will.
I liked it. I actually I didn't the first time I heard the sound. I didn't like. I knew I heard something.
Uh huh.
So that because I'm just so good at watching movies. Like so, the first time I played through, like there was a sound there. There was a sound there. That's gonna, because you're used to, I think, in movies nowadays. I'm thinking of like The Fugitive. Like they heard, remember if you when they caught The Fugitive, he heard like the train in the background.
Right, right.
So I know like when I heard that first, I'm like, there was a sound there. That's gonna be it. That's gonna be how they're gonna track him down. And then when they listened to it more intently, I couldn't get it. And then when he had his friend listen to it, now I'm like, okay, this sound is definitely going to be what gets us to the killer. Let's listen. Let's listen really intently. I didn't necessarily know what it was, but then I was like, this movie is called The Bird with the
Right.
Crystal Plumage. There's been no birds in this dang movie. I
Yeah.
think that's a bird.
Yeah.
But I didn't know how it was going to tie in, but I'm like, that's a bird. It's a
Yeah.
bird. So I know the person is living next to a bird, just like in The Fugitive, they were living next to the train.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it worked. So I kind of feel like, is the title a giveaway a little bit? But
Maybe
it's
kind
not.
of,
It's
'cause-
not.
Yeah,
It's not it doesn't give away the killer
exactly. And
in and of itself.
to be fair, like, it could have been a piece of artwork in the museum. Because
Yeah.
like a bird doesn't technically have a crystal plumage, and neither did the bird that they
Right.
were referring to. It was just like the color and the look of their
Yeah.
feathers. And but I could see it being, though, like, where it's like it's such a rare bird, but like today it might be easier to make that connection, where in like 1970s, like, is it really easy to like figure out what this specific bird sounds like,
and like, or where is one?
or where is
Okay.
one? Yeah, so I
You can't go to the website
Right.
of the zoo and see what's where. Do you guys have these kind of birds there?
sure, absolutely. And like I said, so I was kind of curious, like,
Oh yeah,
I could see how that could be a thing where you might be like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fine. I'll go with it, but
I didn't
it's-
remember in the movie like how Sam knew that the bird was next to their apartment.
Right.
Like,
Oh, because he was.
I know he went there.
He went there, and
but
I
I
think
don't.
he heard it outside the
Okay,
window.
yeah, I don't remember hearing it,
Yeah.
but I did remember him going to their apartment. So I'm like, okay, I guess this tracks.
Right.
But yeah. So I think I was okay with that though.
Yeah.
I was okay with that. But maybe because I was proud of myself. Like this is the one time the movie didn't get me. Like, I almost was ahead of the movie a little bit.
Sure, but to be fair, the Bird of the Crystal Plumage is part of what Argento created, called the Animal Trilogy, which includes The Cat o' Nine Tails and Four Flies on Grey Velvet. And really, there's not really much animals in any of them, so like it's just something that just happened to be in the title. But that's kind of especially
He likes long titles.
well, that's actually a very much a Giallo thing. Like,
Oh, is it?
Oh my God! Like, some of the titles of Giallo films are really just insanely crazy. Let me see if I can pull up some real
The
fast.
murderer you never thought it would be was
Oh
him.
my! Like, seriously, like, I mean, there's some really great, like, Don't Torture a Duckling, Seven Deaths in the Cat's Eye, Black Belly of the Tarantula.
Wait, is Giallo
Seven
films
Notes in
have to have an
Black.
animal in the title?
I mean, that's fair. Like, there are a lot of animals in titles. Blood and Black Lace, that one's not as crazy, but Sweet Body of Deborah, Quiet Place to Kill.
Yeah.
It's just
A lot of
like
words.
a lot of words. So yeah, that is Blue Eyes of the Broken Doll.
Yeah.
Mario Bava, who's another director of Giallo films, also is known for long titles like that. Here's another one. This is another one I've seen on this list. Another one, long title. What have you done to Solange?
I don't know.
I've seen that one too. It's not bad.
They probably killed her.
Exactly. That's what happens in these movies. But yeah, so let's, I feel like at this point we've kind of like gone through a lot of the elements of a Giallo film. And while you have only seen one at this point, can you see through our conversation, does a style make a genre?
I think I can answer that. I didn't know if I really could, but I do think this is those are elements that you could try to replicate and make your own and keep and keep it in this, I guess, subgenre of horror. So I think you can. I think if they're strong enough, though, it feels to me like this movie they were so strong, like it's so visualized that I think you can. But can you only do it with one director? Because I know even like not to keep bringing up like spaghetti westerns, but like spaghetti westerns is a thing, but there's really like one or two directors that did them all. You know what I mean? I can't
Sure.
remember their names right now, but is that kind of so is Giallo really Argento only and a
No,
couple
no.
other people, or is this really a big thing?
No, yeah, there are definitely multiple Giallo directors, and they do, more or less stick within the parameters of Giallo. And like I said, in fact, Argento really, while he uses, elements of Giallo filmmaking going forward, most of his movies kind of end up going more towards horror,
Okay, you wouldn't even.
supernatural, so they wouldn't even really constitute as
Would you call
a
this
Giallo.
tighter than like a description of like a noir movie? Is Giallo smaller than that? Or
I would, I'm going to say yes.
Yeah.
I would say yes, and in fact, like I said, this, while I feel like film noir is a quote full on genre, I do feel like people refer to Giallo films as a subgenre.
Yeah.
So I think in that regard, to be a subgenre, you really do kind of have to have a very,
Your narrow focus.
Narrow
You got to thread the
focus,
needle a little bit more.
exactly.
But I definitely see how you could do it, and that I can see. It's almost like sometimes you'll watch a movie and like you know what it is just by looking at it. You know what I mean? I feel like I could maybe watch something and say this. I think this is a Giallo now.
Right.
So maybe yes.
So we're going with yes.
I'm gonna go yes. I mean, do you teach me though? What do you think?
No,
I mean,
no, I
just-
agree. No, I
Yeah.
100% agree with you. But again, like I'm curious to you as a newcomer, to the
Yeah.
Giallo genre. If you, like you said, if you go and let's say you walk into a movie, you don't know the title, you just start watching it and you start seeing these elements. Do you think you click in your head and be like, this is a Giallo film?
I bet you. I bet $5 this is a Giallo film. Yeah, I think I would. You're gonna have to expose me to another. We could actually
Oh, I've
answer
got
that
you.
question on future viewing.
I've got you. I own a few more that I really enjoy, so I think I can definitely help you out there. But so before we get to those, before we jump too far
Let's
ahead,
not
we got
jump
to
the
answer
shark.
exactly. We got to answer the
Can't
real
go to the next movie
question.
before we finish this one.
Exactly. We got to finish this episode before we start planning the next. So, Ray, the big question to you is, did you like The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, and would you recommend it?
Okay. As we always say, these are sometimes not
Sometimes
easy to
not easy.
hide our appreciation for the movie. And I will say I did like this movie. And not only am I going to
Yes.
recommend it, this might be the first time I'm going to say I have to recommend you watch this movie twice. I almost have to recommend myself to go watch
Yes.
the movie a second time.
There you go.
Yeah, like I said, usually if you've listened to our podcast, I'm always saying like I'm about character and choices.
Mhm.
And I will say I don't know if Sam was a great character because he doesn't like have to go through big change. He kind of has to survive, and he's more
Sure.
like the detective, and he figures it out.
Yeah.
But like you said, like there's so much more to the movie
Yeah.
that like it's like all right, you can't be absolutely perfect in everything.
Sure.
So like maybe I would want more out of the Sam character, but again, the style, the music, the cinematography, and a heck of a twist that's going to make you be like, oh, I wish I saw it coming, but I didn't. Like,
Yeah.
I think all that, and being introduced to a new genre of movie I didn't even know existed.
Yeah. Giallo is cool as hell. That's the definition. When you
Yeah.
look in the dictionary under Giallo, it says cool as hell.
It's like
And that's
edible
what it
underwear. I didn't even know it existed.
says. Did you want to know that existed?
No, I was trying to think of that old school reference where he's like, what if there's something cool out there I didn't even know?
Existed. Yeah, it's probably just white cotton panties.
Yeah.
Something really cool that I've never even heard of.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That was the kind
I
of
did
joke
that.
I was
I brought that in. Yes, I brought you something cool that you never even heard
Yes,
of. I
so-
brought you the edible underwear of movies.
Thank you, Rob. All right, Rob, before we wrap up this convo on TBWTCB,
Oh my
P.
god.
darn it,
Quick
I
on
couldn't
your
do it.
So close. You're
Darn, that's hard. That's
that
really
was
hard.
hard. I was gonna say that was impressive.
But before we do that, what else you been watching?
Well, I haven't watched much. We had 2 close episodes this week, so
Yeah.
I didn't get to watch a ton between the last episode and this episode. But let's see. I did watch. Oh, I finally finished the new season of Harley Quinn.
So did I.
I had a feeling you might have. It's fine. It's a show that I continue to watch because it's still fun to watch. But do I feel like it has much runway left? No.
Yeah, there's no like it doesn't. It like the storyline was good, like for its uniqueness. Like
Yeah.
it can exist in the world, but like just like the shock value humor is just like you're too. I've said this about other shows, but you just get so like in tuned with the show that you see all the jokes coming, like you know
Yeah.
what they are, and like you can appreciate that you like. There's that familiarity, but it's not. It just doesn't. It's not as funny anymore. If you're a comedy show, it's not good when your show doesn't
Yeah.
resonate.
Yeah. Kaylee Cuoco is still like amazing as Harley Quinn, and Lake Bell is still so good as
Yeah.
Poison Ivy. The voice talent is still on point. I see what they're going to do next season though, which could be interesting and could make for a good final season.
Yeah.
Because now that Metropolis and Gotham are right next to each other, there's going to be a lot of Batman versus Superman.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that element, and like could make next season better for me, but I still kind of hope it's the last.
I do too. I think it's end on top, or end before you start to see the return on investment fall too much. So I agree.
Yeah. The other thing that I watched is A Complete Unknown.
Oh, I do know about that because I watched it too.
Oh my God, we're just gonna have watched all the same things,
How
aren't we?
boring is that?
But let's see. Yeah, it was a good movie. I went in with kind of mixed expectations. One, because I'm a big fan of I'm Not There, which is the Bob Dylan biopic that came out in 2007.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that was very different for a biopic, and that's kind of what for a character like Bob Dylan,
Sure.
you would imagine. So when Mangold decided, like, oh, I'm going to make a Complete Unknown, I'm like, well, I mean, I like Walk the Line,
Yeah.
and
Ray.
obviously, but like, I'm just at this point, a straightforward biopic about Bob Dylan. I'm like, do I care that much about it? But Timothy Chalamet was really good.
Yeah.
He was perfect as Bob Dylan. Like in my mind now, like for this type of movie, well, he would have fit in with the multitude of people that played Bob Dylan and I'm Not There, because I mean even Kate Blanchett played Bob Dylan and I'm Not There at one point. But Timothy Chalamet, was great.
He was great.
as Dylan, and I could. He was the person to play Bob Dylan.
I still argue he looks more like Bob Dylan without the makeup than with it. But
Sure.
That's just my own personal opinion, I guess.
Fair enough. But he did his own singing and all of that, and it was a good movie. It was definitely better than I expected it to be. I thought it was funny because there was a little bit of it felt like the Mangold universe, because Johnny Cash was also in it.
Yeah.
And I remember in Walk the Line, he was talking about the letters that he writes with Bob Dylan. So
Yeah.
I'm like, it's funny that those movies
Yeah.
kind of crossed over.
Yeah.
I
will say, like, I guess the music was great. Obviously, you knew it would
yeah.
be, but like, I didn't really know if Bob Dylan's character went on a real arc in the movie.
Biopics are weird like that, because it's like, do they,
But then
are
be a
arcs
guy.
necessary?
Yeah.
Right. You know what I mean? No,
Yeah.
I get where you're coming from completely. Like, it's
Yeah.
just, I think that is a question. Maybe for another episode if we do a movie like
Oh.
that, where it's like, does a biopic
Yeah.
need an arc?
Yeah.
Because
I just kind of felt like they got to this point where it's like, I couldn't tell at the end of the movie if we're supposed to be mad at Bob Dylan because he was moving away from folk music, or if we're supposed to support. Like, he kind of says from the jump, like, I'm not a folk singer, I'm just a singer. You know,
Yeah.
like that's one of the first lines he says in the movie,
Yeah.
and then at the end of the movie, it's all like, "You're not doing folk music anymore." I'm like,
Well, yeah.
well,
Well, and to be fair, like the Newport Folk Festival guys were definitely prima donnas in their own right
For
about their
sure.
folk
That's what-
music and
yeah.
whatever. And I'm just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Everybody's kind of a prima donna in this situation,
Yeah,
but everybody overreacted. And especially since Newport still goes to this day, and they play electric guitars.
Oh,
at,
they had to get an amendment to the Constitution to do that. It would seem like, but
Exactly.
but that was very cool. And I did look there. I thought there was that great line though. I will say it. I don't know if this is a spoiler or not. Maybe I shouldn't say it. But the movie's on.
Yeah, go do it.
But I
say
just
it.
thought when his last scene where he's like kind of breaking up with the girlfriend, who's
Uh.
played by one of
Elle
the
Fanning.
yes, one of the Fangs, Elle Fanning. When she was like, I feel like one of those plates from one of those dinner
Oh,
spinners,
yeah.
and he's like, I always thought those guys were cool, and she's
Right.
like, yeah, I'm sure it would be to be one of those guys,
Right.
but I'm the
on
plate.
the plate, right? Yeah, yeah. No, that was a good line. It was, and she was great in it. Elle Fanning's great
She
in
was.
most things she's in. To be fair, well, let's see. I haven't really watched much else to speak of, but I will say, and this kind of coming this month to HBO or to Max, I should say,
Yeah.
is The Last of Us Season 2. So
Can't wait.
I played through the 2 games
Ooh,
again. So I
both
played
of
through
them.
Last of Us.
You
and
played
then I played
without
Last
me.
of Us Part
I
2.
watched you
did.
play through the first time.
Yeah, so I played through them again in preparation for the next
That's
season.
very cool.
So they're still Last of Us Part 2 is the greatest video game ever made.
That's controversial.
It is, and I don't care because the intestinal fortitude
Yeah.
that Neil Druckmann put into that game, and which comes through. I'm hoping will come through in this season is insane. You know, between
Yeah.
Ellie and Abby and the journey that both of them go through, and your emotion, like the things they make you do in that game. That you're like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
But you know, yeah.
You have to.
You have to. If you want to beat the game, you got to.
Yeah.
So,
And I've
so
never
good.
played the games. I've watched it like before I even had a gaming station. I watched a playthrough, like a cinematic telling of a playthrough on
Yeah.
YouTube.
Uh-huh.
And that's how I was like, you need to play this game. And
Yeah.
then I watched you play through it, and I've never actually played it, but love the story. Obviously, love season 1. As interested to see how they adapt season 2 as into just
Yeah.
watching the episodes, because it's not going to be easy
No.
and it's going to be controversial. I guarantee people are going to be upset by it. It
I'm
might
already
be lovely, but
Yeah.
they'll be upset by it.
I'm already going in a little upset. And you and
Yes.
I've had these conversations,
You
and
don't-
after playing the
yeah.
game, it actually makes me even a little bit more upset going
Yeah.
into season 2 with the casting.
Maybe we'll save a
choice
little
with
Last
Abby.
of Us review later.
Yeah,
but
we will.
see
We'll
how it
definitely
goes.
be talking about it as it happens. But yeah, I just there are things that I am curious to see if the characters will land as hard in the show as they do in the
Yeah.
games because of some of the changes they've made. But open mind. First season was great. I'm
Brave
going to go
review.
in open mind. Exactly. But okay, so you need to save us now by telling me something you've watched that I haven't watched. So
Yeah.
save us, Ray, please.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to spare you because I watched Craven the Hunter.
Oh, thank God, because now I don't have to.
Yeah. Don't. It was not any good. I mean, I can't even. There's nothing I could say for it. This Sony universe is so horrible.
Right.
They've mucked this up. I don't know how you spend billions of dollars and just produce as consistently bad stuff as that.
Is it just bland, or
It's
is
just
it...
bland. Yeah, it's just bland. There's just like nothing really all that original to
Yeah.
it. You know, I mean, you have these dark gray characters, and because they were trying to do this solo thing, it's like they paint them too nice and just too down the middle.
Right.
That nothing really works at any real level. Like you're literally just watching it to see like what's gonna happen and like how bad is this. There's no, I didn't go in watching and expecting anything, and I didn't really get anything.
Right.
So
Did you watch the last Venom movie? The last.
no,
Dance?
I actually have not watched.
That's
part 3 of
online
that.
now. You should watch it.
Yeah, it's on Netflix.
It's decent. It's decent. I enjoyed it. I think those, like the Venom movies, while they're not perfect, I think that there are things to enjoy about them, which I have not found in any of the other Venomverse
No.
movies outside of
No.
it.
Well, that's the problem. The problem why it's not a Miles Morales universe, and it.
Oh my
it's
God!
just,
Don't
I
even
think
get
the
me
worst
started
thing
on that.
They can't figure out how to crack this Spider-Man thing, and they have, and they are producing an animated version that's amazingly successful, but they
Yeah.
won't go there in live action. Makes no sense to me, but whatever.
Agreed.
All right, everybody, as me and Rob wrap up this conversation on the bird with the crystal plumage, I have to remind you and really tell you that you, before you leave, have to like this podcast, subscribe to the podcast, leave us a 5-star review so that we can read it live on air someday, email the podcast at carrayrobgmail@gmail.com, and follow us on Blue Sky. And if you don't do that, you're Giallo.
What? Nobody calls me Giallo, Ray. Nobody.
Back to the Future.
But if you wanted to call me Giallo, you could do that on whatever comment section you're
Sure
on,
could.
whatever platform you were listening to it on. Tell Ray that he is also Giallo. You know what? Let me know what your favorite Giallo movie is, because it is a wide. For being a subgenre, there are a lot of these movies out there. So I have not seen them all, or even heard of them all. So if you have one to recommend, please, by all means, do so and let us know what you thought of Bird with the Crystal Plumage. We will be back in 2 weeks, and it will be back to Ray.
I'm ready. Should we do it now, or should we wait the whole 2 weeks?
No, let's wait the whole 2
Okay.
weeks, because I know you're going to bring something terrible, and I don't think I can emotionally take that right now.
I'm ready to do that too.
Well, we will find out if that is true. You're not going to want to miss it. But until then, this is Car Ray Rob.
Where I'm Ray.
And I'm Rob. And remember, be defined by the films you love, not the ones you hate.
Hey there, it'll be just a little while till Ray and Rob spit their spittle. Come on, check out of the hospital. So grab some of your best peanut brittle. This will be a darn good transmittal. And say hello to my little film.
Hey everyone, Ray here. Want to give you guys a quick heads up about what will be coming on the next episode of Say Hello to My Little Film when it's my turn to introduce a movie to Rob. I'm going to be showing him 1994's Hoop Dreams. Maybe the best documentary ever, definitely cinematically speaking. This is a doc that follows the lives of two aspiring kids as they kind of grow up to become men and try to follow their hoop dreams of making the NBA. So it follows William Gates and Arthur Agee from eighth grade through high school. It's touches on so many life aspects, and it's a must watch. So if you haven't checked out Hoop Dreams, do it in the next couple of weeks and be ready for our next episode.